Special Ops. The Lioness team and their missions were further disrupted by the release of Lioness Season 2 Episode 6 on Sunday, November 24, 2024, on Paramount+. Tension increased in the most recent episode of the spy thriller as the squad faced with the fallout from their disastrous mission at the border, which left them facing significant challenges. After the Mexican human traffickers detonated themselves with a suicide bomber, Joe was left speechless in Lioness Season 2 Episode 5. But in Episode 6, the crew had to deal with more than just the fact that they couldn't save the kids. Joe discovered she was hurt in the explosion on the way home, and it soon became a life-or-death situation for her. Hey everybody, hope you are having a good day. Before going to the main topic, I want to say like this video and subscribe to the channel. As Josie attempted to persuade her father to cooperate with the CIA against his brother, mayhem broke out at the Carrillo estate. The rest of the Lioness struggled to find a way ahead after 2 missions exploded, and one of them faced death in Episode 6 of the 2nd season of the espionage thriller. It didn't help that they found a mole in the middle, particularly with regards to Joe. The conclusion of Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 5 established the plot for Episode 6. In Shatter the Moon, she was in the midst of a mission gone bad. In Lioness Season 2 Episode 4, the Lioness team, led by Joe, attempted to stop the Mexican human traffickers at the border in order to assist in rescuing the children they discovered at the warehouse. However, when a suicide bomber broke out from the traffickers group, destroying the entire group as well as the children, things went horribly wrong. As shown at the start of Paramount+ as Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 6, Joe appeared to be largely uninjured, but she was clearly shaken following the explosion. Joe started to doubt her choice to try to stop the gang at the border after none of the traffickers or the kidnapped children made it out alive. She even questioned Bobby about whether the girl would have lived if they hadn't attempted to save her. Things took a turn for the worse for Joe when Byron told him to go home after hearing what had transpired in the mission. 2 cops called on her personal phone while on the plane, and her fellow Lioness told Joe that he couldn't reach her business phone when she reminded him that it wasn't a secured line. Joe checked on her other phone after hearing this, and discovered it was broken. After this, she began to suspect that something had gone wrong, and it was then that she became aware that something was amiss with her. When she removed her vest, she discovered that she had been shot. After that, Joe called Caitlin to give her an update on her injury and request a surgical response team. She mentioned that there was no exit wound and that the darker colored blood made her think the bullet had clipped her liver. Because of her low pulse and blood pressure, the co-pilot thought that the bullet had also clipped a lung. After that, he assisted Joe in doing a needle decompression, which involves sticking a needle into her pleural area to extract any trapped air or fluid that was crushing her lungs. Following the emergency operation, Joe called Neil, who was watching Charlie's soccer match, after the co-pilot had excused himself for a while. However, Joe was unconscious when the co-pilot came back to see how she was doing. Joe's future after suffering the severe wounds seems uncertain at the conclusion of Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 6. Caitlin disclosed that the prognosis was still unknown and that the bullet had entered her lung and punctured her liver. Caitlin hinted that she might lose her pal at one point in Episode 6. The second Lioness squad was coping with another operation that was not going their way as Joe coped with the fallout from the explosion in Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 5 and battled for her life on the trip home. In Special Ops, Lioness Season 2 Episode 6, Captain Josefina Carrillo, also known as Josie, determined it was time to face her father at the Carrillo estate. However, the Carrillo patriarch began slapping her after she informed her father that they were aware of him and his activities. Cruz, who was at the estate with Josie, stepped in and put all the cards on the table. Meanwhile, the other members of their monitoring squad began to step in as well. Everyone present at the house at the time, just Josie's father and a maid, is rounded up. Then, 2 cops learned that the maid was wired and that she has a connection to Gutierrez, the same DEA agent who worked with Joe and the Lioness team in Episode 4 of Season 2. Since their cover was now visible, fresh security would be arriving as soon as the shift changed. They had to come up with a new plan, move fast, and carry it out. Josie and her father, meanwhile, got into a heated argument right before the conclusion of Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 6. When Kyle shared his concerns that Agent Gutierrez was a mole with the other members of the Lioness team while they were still at the border, Bobby said she wasn't shocked to hear it. Tucker asked Kyle what he wanted to do, and he said that he wanted to return to the base with the DEA agent. The squad got him in the car and drove back to the base, just like that. Tucker and the tracer unarmed him on the way, and Kyle discussed a police officer who was caught flipping. At the base, they began torturing Gutierrez in an attempt to get him to talk about his relationship with the maid and the Carrillo estate. When Caitlin got to the base, he began threatening his family, showing him a photo of what would happen to his wife and children if he didn't cooperate, but the DEA agent was unconcerned. He disclosed that the housekeeper at the Carrillo estate used to be his oldest son's nanny at the conclusion of Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 6. He hinted that he had been monitoring Pablo Carrillo for years, but had found no evidence linking him to the Mexican cartel or proving his involvement. Although the crew had previously been compelled to collaborate with him, they were unwilling to believe him, particularly because he was partially to blame for Joe's severe injuries. Caitlin gave Kyle instructions to polygraph Gutierrez at the conclusion of Special Ops. Lioness Season 2 Episode 6 in order to determine whether or not he is telling the truth. She gave them the order to cast Gutierrez into the river if he didn't pass the polygraph. After the unsuccessful rescue attempt against the cartels, Joe, Zoe Saldana, appears completely confused at the start of Lioness Season 2 Episode 6. What can they say to the responding police officers? Bobby, Jill Wagner, asks. Joe advises her not to comment because they still have spies undercover. Joe questions whether the girl she put the tracker on would still be alive if they hadn't tried to save her, even though Bobby attempts to reassure him that what happened wasn't her fault. The incident's aftermath is rapidly intensifying. As soon as Byron, played by Michael Kelly, finds out, he orders Joe to board a plane for a debriefing. The other agencies that have responded to the site, meanwhile, don't appear to be as eager as Joe is to ignore this incident. The entire endeavor is turning into a S***T show when you include in a possible mole in Joe's crew and chaos at the Carrillo home. Not to mention the episode's most potentially startling turn, which you can read about in our comprehensive Lioness Season 2 Episode 6 recap below. Josefina, Genesis Rodriguez, tells Cruz, Laislada Oliveira, that she is afraid of her father, Pablo, Damian Castro, and that she no longer recognizes him the morning after their uneasy first meal at the Carrillo home. She claims to have believed her father was immortal after he saved a baby that had fallen from a horse when she was 9 years old. According to Cruz, girls frequently imagine themselves as the age of their fathers in their best recollections and think of them as they were at that time. However, Josefina is no longer 9 years old, and her father is not who she believed him to be. She needs to discuss their purpose with him. Josefina strikes up the difficult subject after a brief exchange of pleasantries with her father. She informs him that the CIA is aware of his affiliation with her uncle's cartel. Pablo lashes out at his daughter in a fit of rage. He shouts, "Why would the CIA try to ruin their family when they don't care about drugs?" Cruz enters and stops him before he can attack her again, proving to Josefina that they are CIA. Security tape captured all of this, and it shows Pablo's guys running toward the house. However, Randy, Austin Hebert, Tex, Jonah Wharton, and 2 Cups, James Jordan, also saw and are arriving as reinforcements. They secure the house and send out the security team. Cruz informs Pablo that he has 2 choices. Either he cooperates with them by assisting in the identification of a foreign asset and is subsequently placed under witness protection, or they arrest him right away for his involvement with the cartels, take his assets, and throw him in county jail, where he is unlikely to survive the night. Pablo appears to reluctantly choose option 2. 2 Cups encounters the maid, Atsi, Sophie Calderon, as the group works to secure the Carrillo residence. She is wearing a wire, which he discovers while searching her. Joe and her crew were not informed by DEA agent Gutierrez, Kirk Acevedo, that she is an informant. When 2 Cups contacts Joe on her personal phone to let him know that her work phone isn't working, she takes it out and discovers it has been shot to pieces, which startles and scares her right away. She is informed by 2 that the operation has been compromised and that they have 9 hours to devise a new strategy before the next Carrillo security squad arrives for their shift. Joe gives him instructions to find a safe location and tell Kyle, Thad Luckenbill, everything, particularly regarding Gutierrez. Kyle and the rest of the squad are obviously upset that Gutierrez might be a mole. Under the pretense that they must return to base, they get him into the car. They promise to uncover the truth, but once he's in the car, they begin hitting him and calling him a mole. When Joe ends his call with 2 cups, she takes off her equipment and discovers that she was shot during the rescue operation and that the bullet is still inside of her without an exit wound. She phones Caitlin Nicole Kidman and informs her that she requires surgery after being shot in the liver. In under 20 minutes, Caitlin has the jet redirected to land at a military base, but Joe's condition is rapidly deteriorating. Neil, played by Dave Annable, is at a soccer match with the girls when Joe contacts him. Joe appears skeptical that she will survive this one, so she reminds him, breathlessly, that the sun rises and sets with him and that he must look after the girls. Joe faints while Neil frantically inquires as to what's wrong. A doctor treats Joe after the plane lands and takes her to a hospital, so she may have surgery. Caitlin informs Byron that Joe is undergoing surgery, but it is still unclear if she will survive, prior to their meeting with Mullen, Morgan Freeman, and his crew in the Situation Room. In order to deflect some of the blame from the Kryllos for everything that has happened, she also tells him that Gutierrez did not disclose that he had an informant. They are immediately shown a news report about the failed mission as soon as they go into the Situation Room. Obviously, other agencies didn't share CIA's preference for silence. This starts a heated argument in which everyone accuses one another of being responsible for the mission's out-of-control development and drastic change from its initial plan. Mullen calms everyone down by inquiring about how they will move past this. What are the hazards, and is the mission still feasible? Caitlin tells them how the failure to disclose Gutierrez's source jeopardized their Lioness mission. Even though Gutierrez is a federal agent, they are allowed to detain him due to Code 2831, which is for treason, stating that his withholding of information can be categorized as helping an enemy of the state. As a result, they currently have Pablo in custody and Gutierrez in detention. Byron adds that they must change the mission's objective because they are unable to quit despite all the risks. They decide to assassinate Josefina's uncle, Alvaro Carrillo, as a hard target hit rather than an undercover embedding operation, and they hope that the Chinese agent they're really pursuing is with them. To tidy up when the job is finished, they will murder Pablo and Gutierrez. Mullen must leave because of the risks of this scheme in order to have deniability. It is hinted that Byron and Caitlin have the go-ahead, even though his associates claim they cannot approve such a black ops mission. At the base, Gutierrez is being tortured by Kyle and the crew in order to get information, but Caitlin takes over the interrogation when she gets there. She claims that they have all of the information about Gutierrez's family and that they will divulge it if he doesn't participate, putting them in danger from the cartels. Gutierrez talks as a result, although he insists he is not a mole. For years, he had been on Carrillo, even employing the maid as an informant because she used to nanny his children. However, he didn't have her wear a wire until the CIA arrived. He claims that despite his years of observation, there is no concrete proof that Carrillo is connected to the cartel. He received his house as a bequest from the guy who built it, and his financial accounts are in normal condition. To make sure all of this is true, Caitlin wants Kyle to have Gutierrez take a polygraph test. If he doesn't pass, she advises Kyle to throw Gutierrez in the river. In the meantime, Caitlin meets Cruz and that team in Dallas with Bobby and Tucker, LaMonica Garrett. Speaking of, Pablo only stares at Josefina angrily while they keep him in a safe place. Josefina looks back at her father with equal intensity, albeit she is unable to control her tears. Let us know in your comments. And stay tuned by subscribing our channel to get more updates like this. Thanks, everyone.